Oh, hey, hi, how are you? Yeah, today I'd like to talk to you about situational awareness. It's a topic of varying importance, depending on, of course, what's happening in the news. But to be brutally honest, the absence of situational awareness needs to be considered as the biggest contributor to adverse, serious, and negative events at the workplace. Well, actually, pretty much anywhere for that matter work, home, fun, etc. I'm talking damage, injury, illness, or worse. Now, the principles I'm going to review in this video can be used in your everyday settings. Read that not just at work. And if you use them, they'll go a long way to helping you stay safe. Who knows? Maybe even save your life. I know it sounds a bit dramatical and over the top, but it's the truth. Situational awareness, though, have you heard of the term before? Do you know what it means? The common definition is this: it's the perception of the elements in the environment within a volume of time and space, the comprehension of their meaning, and the projection of their status in the near future. So, in short, it means being aware of your surroundings enough that should something out of the ordinary, worst case scenario, an event that can hurt you or worse occurs, you can react and react appropriately. Now, the premise is nothing new. It's a discipline that's been used in law enforcement, by tactical personnel, and it's utilized in self-defense and personal protection settings. In case you didn't know, that's a fancy term for bodyguard. So whether you're 6 or 60, a laborer on a construction site, or just enjoying some time out with loved ones, these principles can contribute to your safety and security. Before we talk about the process, we need to address some typical problems, the things that hinder situational awareness, and then, of course, 4 simple steps to help increase your situational awareness. These problems are complacency, routine, and deceptive appearances. Now, what I mean by complacency is we can often take our safety and security for granted, whether this is caused by technology that we use, fortunate circumstances where, nothing bad's happened in recent memory, or just familiarity with the tasks that we're performing. It doesn't really matter what way you think, but the old saying is, complacency kills. When we become complacent, we're not paying attention to our surroundings. When we allow complacency to creep in, we're more prone to distraction. I mean, when was the last time you were complacent when you're performing your high-risk tasks? Like, working at heights, working on a high ladder. When were you complacent? Although I guess it can happen. So here's the question. Another question, if you will. Have you ever had something on your mind, whether it's a personal problem or something you're trying to solve, and you simply do not notice anything around you? I can remember when I would be wrestling with a software or hardware issue, and my wife would want to go somewhere. Now, if I couldn't get her to drive, invariably I would end up with some sort of a close call. Blowing a stop sign or a red light was the usual thing. A close call, none the same, but with serious potential. Now, remember that earlier definition? When we're complacent to our surroundings, we can't perceive the elements in the environment within a volume of space and time. It just will not happen. Now, the next issue at hand is routine. Somewhat similar to the first point. We as human beings like routine. Have you ever noticed that when you move into a new place, start a new job, or begin something new that's going to turn into something long-term, you find a routine? Whether it's the quickest way to work, the shortest route to the gym. Yeah, you may have noticed I'm kind of struggling with that right now. Regardless, whatever it is, we love to form routines. And when we form routines, it's a benefit to our mental health. It frees our mind from what we sometimes perceive as mundane tasks, and it helps us to mentally overcome that sense of unmanageability. When we establish routines, we gain a sense of control. However, these routines can also be something to our detriment. Regardless of the potential and the potential benefit to mental health, when we form that routine, we sort of slip into the same trap as the previous point. We tend to lose focus on our surroundings because, well, let's be serious. We've been here and we've done this several times. I mean, how many times have you heard the phrase, I can do this on autopilot? When we're on autopilot, we're often oblivious to our surroundings as well. If we combine the first point of complacency and then routine, well, we're starting to wander into some really dangerous territory. Here, let me ask you another question. Have you ever gone to work or got most of the way there and you didn't recall the drive or how you got there? Yeah, me too. When we become complacent and absolutely immersed in our routine, it becomes difficult to comprehend the meaning of these elements that we're supposed to be perceiving. I want you to think emerging or present hazards in relation to these elements. And now, the last point, the last problem is deceptive appearances. In other words, what we see is not necessarily what we're looking at unless we're looking for it. Take, for instance, there's a reason that ladders cannot be painted. When we get one that's painted and new, well, we might be climbing to our death because it could be hiding damage. And here's a few other good examples. Here's a work one. You decide to skip your walk around inspection of your forklift. You've done it 100, maybe more times. And for the longest time, it's been the same. La-di-da. You just basically pencil whip your way into getting started. I mean, the thing's been running like a top for how long? Never anything wrong with it. Now you start off, you lift your forks a bit, and you head over to grab that first pellet, and then, forks don't lower, and boom, right through a pallet worth of goods. Or in another setting, you head out to the parking lot after work. You've done it dozens of times, so of course you whip out your phone and you begin swiping through your social media feed. You don't even notice a few different folks in the parking lot. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but unfortunately, it's happened many times with severe outcomes. Or here's another one. You and your significant other walk into a restaurant and the waiter seats you and you hear a commotion off to one side. But you do your typical thing. You don't look up. You bury your head in the menu. Because after all, it sounds like some people arguing. So there's the question you might want to ask. Have they had too much to drink? Is it possible that one or more of them are carrying a weapon? You need to be aware of your surroundings wherever we are. Otherwise, we will not be able to react to those emerging hazards. So you need to consider your safety. Y.O.U.R Safety. Now, there's a few mnemonics, and there's lots of different terms to this. For instance, PCA, which is perception, comprehension, and action. Or the other one, OODA loop, which was designed by American Special Forces, I believe, and it's observe, orient, decide, and act. I wanted to create something a little bit easier to remember and something that might hit personally home. So I thought of your safety, Y-O-U-R Safety. Simple, right? Your safety. So let's look at what it stands for. Y is yield. In other words, give way to your surroundings. Understand the importance of giving your attention to your immediate surroundings. Don't bring your distractions into your environment, whether it's your working environment or a different environment. In other words, lose the earbuds. I know Apple's going to hate me, but lose the earbuds. If you're driving, roll down the window, get some fresh air, or even better if you can pull over and walk around and clear your head. Either way, you need to understand your surroundings. Your surroundings can have hazards present, and unless you're paying attention to the environment you're in, those hazards can creep up on you awful fast. Now, the next point, the O in your, is observe your surroundings. It's not only about being observant, it's about being vigilant. Look up from your work often. Practice that idea of scanning the room for 20 seconds left to right every few minutes, wherever you are. Whether you're in the marketplace or you're on the warehouse floor, learn to do a peripheral scan every so often. When you're driving, remember this, you have 3 mirrors. Use them. Remember that commotion I was talking about earlier in the restaurant? Don't ignore events around you. Figure out a way to identify if it's a threat or not. Look over your shoulder if you have to. If you have to, turn around. Do what you need to do to either identify the hazards that may be present or ensure none are present. And this leads me to the next point. You have to understanding what you've just observed. Like when you're walking into that parking lot and you saw a few people that didn't belong, what do you think? What do you do? What about when you're closing a bay door at work and all of a sudden something skips a bit? Feels like something's a bit loose. Do you just shrug it off? Or could it be something more? Or let's go back to that ignoramus yelling at their friends in the restaurant. Did the fact that his hands were under the table the whole entire time concern you? When you start understanding what you've observed, your brain automatically starts planning. The moment you understand, the moment you begin to plan. And that leads me to the next point, or the next letter, which is R for react. React to your yielded surroundings. You've looked, you've observed, you've understood, and you've understood their threats. But how do you react? In the parking lot, do you just hustle to your car and hope for the best? Or do you go back inside and ask for someone to accompany you to your car, which is likely a wiser decision? And maybe you might tell someone about the two strangers that are in the parking lot. What about that bay door? If you fully understood what's going on, you're going to tag it out until it's inspected and deemed safe, right? Or that commotion in the restaurant. Are you going to tell the waiter to seat you elsewhere? Or maybe just leave and go somewhere else. And on your way out, advise the waiter to call security or the boss, or maybe even think about calling the police. Are you going to put yourself in jeopardy just because there might be some embarrassment or it deviates from the social norm of ignoring things? Because that's what people do these days. They just put their heads down and ignore. It's really a simple principle. And I hope you'll teach your kids. Mine used to mock me. I would scan for and locate exits when I'd go into a place, or if we go to a restaurant, I would insist on getting seated against a wall, or at least so I could see everything, including doors. But hey, that's me. After all, I'm the safety guy. Unfortunately, more often than not, I get called the no fun guy instead. I don't care. So practice that situational awareness. Think it's for your safety. Yield to your surroundings, lose the distraction, or at least suppress them. Observe what's going on around you, looking for hazards. Understand the possible impact of those hazards, and then react appropriately, even if it means leaving the environment you're in. Like I said in the beginning, whether you're 6 or 60, at work, at home, or out having fun, it's an applicable principle, and it needs to be a principle that you practice and hone. Practicing situational awareness will keep you safe and it will get others to notice. Another form of leadership is to lead by example. You don't have to be an executive, a manager, or a supervisor to be a leader. It's about attitude. Talk safety and do safety. Provoke safety wherever you are. Okay, bye for now.